The correction is in. This is Thursday, March the 13th, and this is Markets with Megan. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, hit that alarm bell, share it with friends, family, or colleagues. We're here today to talk to you about the volatility we're seeing in the markets. It's been a very difficult time for equity investors over the past couple weeks, and the S&P 500 officially hit correction territory intraday today. That means it was a correction of 10% or more from its recent high. Now, let's talk about what's going on, why, what we see going forward. First of all, what's changed today? Nothing. The headline news continues to be around tariffs, the going back and forth now between the U.S. and Europe. We're talking about a possible government shutdown, which was always looming, but now looks maybe more of a probability. And then there was some news out of the White House about Greenland and the possible annexation of Greenland. All of this was just way too much for investors to absorb. Combine that with the fact that economic data continues to get weaker. We got some relatively decent news out of the producer price index today, which was inflation, but still the broad economic picture continues to weaken. We're still talking about valuations that are trying to find that clarity around earnings, around interest rates. And then lastly, we're getting some news out of retailers, which started with some of the airlines talking about softening consumer demand. But now we're seeing it from some retail companies. You're talking about these companies saying that consumers are pulling back on spending or they're being more careful about their spending. All of this just continues to feed into that negative feedback loop and that uncertainty loop. What do we think going forward from here? First of all, there is a lot of rhetoric out of the White House, and we understand that. It is very difficult for anyone to keep up with this, especially investors that are trying to day trade in this market. That's not what this market is for. We continue to look at this volatility as potential opportunities because we think that this rhetoric and this tariff fight is a first half of 2025 phenomenon. We think that the administration's pushing this all into the first quarter so that they can open up the second half of this year to really focus on that fight on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. These things in the second half of this year and going into 2026 should be positive for the American economy as well as businesses and consumers. So we're looking at these pullbacks as buying opportunities, looking at some of the areas that are pricing in the potential risk. So look at small and mid-cap stocks. These are areas of the market that are down now in bear market territory. In bear market territory, it's pricing in a recession. It's pricing in almost a worst-case scenario. So it's time to start putting some cash to work if you have it. This is the time we want to start piecing away at areas of the market. The international space, we love it. It's just held up much better. So we're starting to look at the U.S. market, specifically, as I mentioned, that small and mid-cap space. Now, there's a lot of information coming out of these markets. It's extraordinarily fluid and it's discomforting to investors and Americans, but we feel very comfortable about the prospects for the American economy in the long run, and that's why we continue to look at these as buying opportunities. We'll come back in this forum with the podcast to continue to update on the markets as we see fit, to make changes and recommendations as we see. But for now, this is what we see today. Continue to look for those opportunities. Continue to look at your portfolio. Make sure that you're rebalanced in the way that you should be, and certain allocations, for example, in the large cap growth space, haven't run up too much above the comfort level. Rebalance those portfolios. Have the dry powder. Be ready to put it to work. In the long run, these pullbacks tend to be very good long-term buying opportunities. So we'll be back again with more information as we see it. If you want a further history of these podcasts, please go to marketswithmegan.fm. Thank you.